Now to the conflict in Gaza, where fears are growing of a new Israeli assault on the south of the Strip. Israel's military has suggested it now plans to advance towards Rafah, close to the Egyptian border. The UN says Rafah has become a pressure cooker of despair.
Another strike on Khan Younis in southern Gaza. An explosion followed by gunshots sends people running for their lives.
Fear, danger and bombardments are coming from all directions.
Khan Younis has again become the focus of Israeli airstrikes. Its infrastructure has been severely damaged. Thousands more displaced Gazans are once more fleeing to Rafah, further south on the border with Egypt, and already overcrowded.
In recent days, thousands of Palestinians have continued to flee to the south, which is already hosting over half the Gaza's population of some 2.3 million people. Most are living in makeshift structures, tents, or out in the open. Rafah is a pressure cooker of despair, and we fear for what comes next.
The new arrivals in Rafah rely on food handouts provided by humanitarian groups or donation centers like this one. Aid workers can only feed a small number of displaced.
We are doing our best to distribute as much as we can so that as many of the displaced as possible can get food. There are thousands of displaced people in Rafah, and we can't serve them all.
Everyone here is hoping the latest attempts to secure a ceasefire will pay off.
Straight to Jerusalem, we can join our correspondent Rebecca Ritters. Welcome, Rebecca. Let's start with the latest on the Israeli offensive in Gaza.
Yeah, well, Phil, Israel has been continuing its campaign in the south, specifically around Khan Younis, as you were just hearing in that report. Now, Khan Younis has been a focus of the Israeli military for some weeks now. They say it is a hotbed of Hamas terrorists, as they call them. They say that there are a lot of Hamas leaders there hiding underground, that there are command centres, there are manufacturing sites, launch pads. So they've really been focusing on their both aerial bombardments and also the ground offensive. That's while there's still fighting going on in the central and northern parts of the Strip. Now, this all comes despite the fact that Israel said a few weeks ago that it was going to be winding back this phase, or I should say moving into the next phase, the sort of more targeted phase, and moving away from this continuous bombardments and really quite large ground offensive into the next phase that would be more targeted, as I just said. That's been at the urging of the US, but as we can see from that report there, that hasn't been happening. The Hamas-run health ministry reported more than 100 deaths, people that were killed overnight in the last 24-hour period. That is, of course, expected to rise again tomorrow. And as you heard there, the defence minister, the Israeli defence minister, saying that they are going to push further south, targeting that Rafah border region, that Rafah, that southernmost city, where, of course, more than half of the population of Gaza, more than 1 million people, are now trying to shelter, trying to stay away from the worst of the fighting. Really not clear where those people will go, many of them having already evacuated several times from the north to the centre to the south to the very south down there in Rafah, and really running out of places to go.
Right. And the latest on negotiations between Israel and Hamas about a potential ceasefire.
Yeah, there has been some cautious optimism, particularly coming from the Qataris. Now, they're playing a very large role in these negotiations, as they did with the peace, or the sort of ceasefire that happened in November. They had a very big role in that as well. Now, we heard from the Qatari foreign minister, or the spokesperson, saying that people could be cautiously optimistic that something might happen in a couple of weeks, though it's still too early to say just whether that will come to fruition and when. And we're seeing the negotiations continue as they do. And we saw something very similar before that November deal was struck as well. Things went up, things went down. It looked positive one minute and not so positive the next. So it's really hard to tell when something might happen. Hamas are still, they say, going over the proposal. It does look like the Israelis have already come to some agreement, but that Hamas haven't yet agreed to the deal, and they are now putting on the table that they want some very high-level people to be released from Israeli prisons. Whether or not Israel would agree to such a measure really remains to be seen, Phil. So that deal, hopeful, cautious optimism, as I said, but still could be some weeks away.
OK, thank you for that, Rebecca Ritters in Jerusalem.